Okay, welcome everybody to Module 4. And so today we are going to be talking about eating for your cycle. Last week we were Okay, welcome everybody to Module 4, where we're going to be talking about eating for your cycle today. And before we get started, I have had a very discombobulated morning, so I really need to just ground into being present here with all of you right now, and really set the energy and the tone for myself as well as for all of you. So let's just take a few moments together. And if it's safe for you to do so, let's go ahead and close our eyes for a moment and just start to notice your breath. Take a deep breath, in as deep as it feels comfortable for you right now in this space. Just notice your body. How does it feel? Are you comfortable? Are your feet firmly on the ground? Noticing your environment around you, sensing into it without looking at it if possible. And then sending that awareness out even further into filling up the entire room, into our virtual space with our dear sisters here today and those who will be joining us on the recording. Let's all join in a circle, holding hands energetically and creating this safe container for all of us to be fully present with expanded awareness, not just ordinary awareness. Feeling that beautiful pink and golden light just encircling us, holding us, sending us lots of love, compassion, kindness, breathing into that. Any thoughts or other things coming in, just notice them and let them float through. You can come back to that later. One more breath and then slowly coming back into your present space where we're at here right now today. Acknowledging our circle. And just opening your eyes when you're ready. And I'm going to take a little sip of my tea. If you have water or tea, just take a little sip and just come back into your body and ground into your space. Okay, that's better. Okay, so we're talking about food, one of my favorite subjects. So last week, we're talking about just the basic fundamental principles of how to put our food together and when to eat certain foods as well. And we were talking about, I have it. Yeah, I still have it here. So we were basically working out of my book, the Live Vibrantly 10-Step Blueprint, as I referred to it. And so this was the foundational piece, and it always is the foundational piece of pretty much everything that I talk about in regards to food and nutrition. And I shared the link for it in our Thriving Hormones group. So if anybody doesn't have a copy, I invite you to go ahead and get a copy. There's the ebook version that's available as well as the print version. I do recommend the print version if you can, because then you can make notes all over it and kind of write in it as well too, which is kind of fun, and use it like a textbook. So you always have it for reference. That's my preference anyways. But if you're really more comfortable with digital, then go for it as well too. And so, like I said, that kind of laid the foundational principles. And then today, what I kind of want to dive deeper into and look at is the specific eating for your cycle, right? So we have the 4 phases of your menstrual cycle. And if, like myself, you are postmenopausal or for whatever reason do not have a cycle in the moment, this is where we get to use the moon phases as our calendar. And so, I see this a lot with women who don't have a cycle or who are postmenopausal, where they're feeling kind of lost because all of a sudden we don't have this, we're disconnected from this infradian rhythm in our lives, and it can feel really ungrounding and just feel a little lost in the moment. But knowing that just because we don't have a cycle doesn't mean we're not connected to the planetary cycles and rhythms anymore is huge. And it, for me, it was such a beautiful blessing and a gift to realize that I am still connected, and this is how we can approach this connection and work with this connection. And so I use this food guide even now in my life as much as possible, by using the moon cycles. And so that's why each phase here we'll be talking about the fasting, the season, as well as the moon phase and the life phase that corresponds to it as well. And before I get really into today's module, I did want to just share a little bit about my own personal experience with doing the verses in the Passion Play, which was our opening workshop and ceremony that we did on that special Saturday. And that recording is up if you haven't had a chance to access that as well either. And so within the Passion Play, I was sharing a very simple mirror technique or method. That's a 7-minute thing that we can take advantage of. But where I've really found the beauty in working with the Passion Play is in the working of the verses. And so if you haven't started yet, you haven't watched yet, I definitely encourage you to go back and watch that so you have a better idea of what I'm talking about. And you'll notice that I am mentioning Passion Play pieces throughout all of the modules because it is really the foundation and where I want everybody to encourage you to start, because it lays the foundation for all the rest of these pieces to really be integrated in a much deeper level as well, and in a much more easeful way as well too. And so one of the big things that I think is the greatest gift of the Passion Play method is the clarity. And, I thought I had clarity before. I mean, I knew there was a few gaps missing, but in working through the verses, I've really been able to realize that there was a depth of clarity that I wasn't even accessing. And so for example, I just wanted to share kind of what's been happening right now for me. And as I shared, I've been focusing primarily on the health, the wealth, and the spiritual adventure spheres, just those 3. And I was focusing in the beginning primarily on the health sphere to be able to work through some challenges that I've been experiencing recently. And I was really amazed how quickly I was able to move through those and see the results of what I was working with in that realm. And so now I'm focusing primarily on the wealth realm, which has been a challenge for my family since most of you know our situation. We lost our home and our primary income. And so we are in this incredible, beautiful space of transition right now. And so getting really clear on what that looks like and how to move forward has really opened up through the Passion Play. And for those of you that also have a Healy, like you've been hearing me talk about, the Healy device. Let's see, my program is still running on here right now. I'm running PureCalm because it's been one of those days today. But what I've been doing is there's an application here on the Healy where it's called the coaching app. And you can put in like a positive affirmation, so to speak, or verse from the Passion Play, and then it does a scan, and it will actually show you energetically where your blocks are within that sphere of what you just typed in there. And so it's been really fascinating seeing what's been coming up in these scans for me and showing me where I need to put attention, even at a subconscious level, to be able to make the shifts and changes to be able to open these different floodgates, as I'm referring to them right now. And so I just wanted to share, without going into big detail here, that I started working on, I had these just very basic, wealth verses. And I started off with I am wealthy as my master verse because I had no clue how or where to go with that. And so I just started with something very simple. And now I've been able to work it down into a very more specific verse. And I started putting that verse into the coaching app in my Healy the end of last week. And literally within 48 hours of making that shift, getting that clarity, really honing in on my verses and using the Healy to help support me in that, I literally felt like this burst of energy and things open up. And within 48 hours, I have seen the manifestation of that. My family went from being in a very dire situation financially to being blessed to a point where we're like, okay, we're going to be okay for the next few months. And literally it was, a prayer as well as getting clarity on what I was calling in, and using prayer as part of this manifestation as well. But I was able to get clear and be like, okay, this is what my family needs right now. This is what we're calling in. But what's beautiful about the passion play is it doesn't just like putting these, positive statements or affirmations out into the world, because there's so much more that's necessary to be able to really manifest things in our life. It's aligning with our own integrity and our spirit. And I really, when Jack in the book, when we shared in the opening workshop, talks about when you hit on your verse that really is your like authentic soul verse, your body responds and well, that's what happened finally. And in that moment was where I felt that shift. And literally, like I said, within 48 hours, we were seeing the manifestation of that. And I'm continuing to see it like every moment, every day. It's just like, oh my goodness. And I am just so grateful and so thankful that I got out of my own way and was able to open up the possibilities within my own self with all the support of these, tools. And what I was sharing with Robin earlier too was what's really cool about this is that not only do you have like your master primary verse, but within your sub verses, this is where the clarity comes in, and you're talking about very specific things that apply to you in your personal life, whatever sphere you're working in. It can be the health, the wealth, the spiritual adventure, relationship, or charity. But then you move into the action verses, where the clarity really comes from. And then from all of these pieces and your action verses, when you sit down to map out your day, this is where your to-do list comes from, because you're actually looking at what it is that you are really working on bringing into your life. And so you are basing your day on the action steps that support that. And I love how Jack says in the book, because he brings up the subject of, and this is where I was really stuck, in this whole world of manifestation and affirmation and all of this for so long too, was like, I'm doing I'm saying the verses, right? I am, visualizing, I'm doing all of these elements, but I would get stuck on the action part. And there's so many, teachers out there who are like, oh, well, as long as you put your order into spirit, then spirit will make that happen. But there's this fine line between even action at an energetic level as opposed to non-action. And that's where trust and faith and belief really kind of come all together as well too. And I know I'm kind of rambling because it's just really hard to describe, so I'm so sorry. But the point I'm trying to make here is that, like he says in the book, it's easier for whatever it is that you call it, spirit, universe, divine self, whatever, God, to course correct as you're taking action than to make something happen out of thin air without you taking any action at all, right? And so that just kind of like sat with me and really helped me to get clear on, okay, if this is my master verse and these are my sub verses, what small action steps could I take? Like what realms am I aware of in my life? Acknowledging that there's realms I am so not aware of, and I'll let spirit work in those realms. But within what I'm aware of, what are some small steps that I could take to kind of help support this energy to bring this into my life? And that's the part that just blew wide open for me in like the last few days. And like I said, I'm probably butchering this, but my gratitude and my just place that I feel in my body is so hard to describe right now. But I literally went from like, you know, not seeing a way forward to, even though I trusted, actually seeing how I could support spirit and my higher self to bring this into my life on a whole new level that I've never even thought possible before, and leave the door open for all of these possibilities in a way that I am not even aware of as well too. And so I just want to leave you with that. If anybody has any more questions about that or wants to know more, um, post it up in the group, or if you want to keep something private, just private message me, and I am happy to share more of my own personal experience and talk more about this, because this gift that we have in this passion play method and what I was sharing with you in that opening workshop is something that is really next level and can just really open up the door to facilitating your life in a way that you never even thought possible before. And that's why I'm so passionate about it myself and so excited. And I'm sharing just as I'm doing it and learning it myself. Like I said, I am no master at this. And every time, oh, I was telling with Robin too, last thing about this is that I'm kind of using the book like an oracle as well too. So I was just feeling really stuck the other day, and so I just kind of sat the book down and I said, okay, what is it that would really benefit me to put my attention on right now? Or what is it that, what wisdom do you have to share with me? And I literally just opened up the book, and it opened up to this section, and I read it and I started crying because I was just like, oh my God, like I've read this before, but how come I never got it in this way before? And this is so applicable to right here, right now in this moment. And so I'm going to leave it there. Encourage you all to go back to the passion play when you have a moment, and really make that a priority, and just see what it can do for you. You know, you've got nothing to lose and everything to gain. And it really helps to create a place of irresistible transformation in your life, because that's what we're talking about in all of these modules, is layering foundations of pieces that can support you to create a life. This is not like, you know, a band-aid fix or a prescription where I take this for a certain period of time or do this for a certain period of time and then I blow everything out the window and go back to the way things were, right? Because that's not what transformation and true change is really about. And so we're laying the foundation for you to take these pieces that I'm presenting and sharing with you and to build them out into what your life is in a way that supports you to thrive at every level. Welcome, Denise. And so on that note, I want to move more into, Robin, did you have?
I ask just really quick, are you writing all of your verses in the coach analysis, or are you doing just one at a time? Or writing it like a paragraph for well?
Oh,
Or
good question. So since they expanded the box in there, it doesn't, it depends on how long your verses are. So what I've been doing is making sure that the master verse is in there,
okay.
and then kind of paraphrasing the sub verses and getting in as much as I can.
Okay.
And then when I'm doing the pure technique, and I have all my verses, you know, like written out in full, and I've memorized them. And so I'm using the full verses and going through all the layers there while I'm sending that frequency to myself from the Healy. And I started off with like a 1 minute burst, then I moved into the 2 minute burst, then I moved into the 6 minute burst. And so, but when I'm actually saying my verses, I only do them for the 2 minutes. And then at night, I've been also, that's where I've been sending the longer verse from as well too.
Okay, powerful. I didn't even realize, because I've never tried to write a really long focus here, that it gives you up to 500
It does now. That's new.
characters
It didn't
now.
used to do that. It
Oh,
used to cut you off. So,
so would it be correct if this is just the beginning of my wealth verse, if I had something like, I am a heart aligned, successful saleswoman. I always have a minimum of $100,000 and 100,000 in gold in the bank.
okay, so that would be more of your, so that the specifics would be your subverses,
Subverses.
and the master verse would be the top general one, where it says that I am
A heart-led,
yes,
successful, or a heart-aligned, successful saleswoman.
yes. Now, do
Okay,
you want saleswoman or do you want businesswoman?
both. I want to unlock sales.
Okay,
It's
so keep the
my
sales in there
human
then.
design.
Okay, perfect. Just
Yeah,
checking. So
yeah.
those little things like that, those little nuances with the specific words are very important. But like
Okay,
I
I
said,
love that.
practice, play. I was using all these different words and I thought they resonated, but they didn't. And
Mm,
I knew that because you'll feel it in your body. When you finally hit on the phrase that is your
I
authentic
remember
heart integrity
reading
phrase,
it.
you're just like I get tingles when I
Oh,
see
okay.
that. And
I
that's the
remember reading that in the pages I was going over last night, because he was like, you
yes,
have to like believe it too. Because at
yes.
first I had $1 million in the bank, and every time I read it, I still giggle a little bit. Like, I'm not there yet. Let's get $100,000 in the bank all the
I
time,
did the same thing.
and then
I
I'll
started
jump
at 4
higher.
million and worked my way down to
I
something that
saw your
actually
4 million on the
resonates and feels
page. Yeah.
real. Yeah,
Okay, perfect.
exactly.
Thank you for that help.
Okay, awesome. So like I said, if anybody wants, support on that or wants to know more, like even just throw it up in the chat, in the group. And let's all support each other. That's why I wanted us all to be doing this together so we can support each other, So like your question that you just brought up here, Robin, that would be a great post because other people I'm sure are asking the same question, right? So maybe put that up in the group and we can all keep expanding on that. And then you can share your experience as you refine it of where you're landing with it too. Okay, so let's move into eating for your cycle and specific foods here. So last week we were talking about, the I Live Vibrantly way, which is we're using Doc Wheelwright's 5+5 equation. And so just to reiterate, that 5+5 equation was in the protein realm, you have 1 cooked protein and 4 raw proteins. And then in the vegetable plant realm, you have 1 cooked and 4 raw within that. And so those are the 2 primary categories that, we've been talking about. And as we go through the specific foods here, I put notes in here. So I'm going to kind of talk a little bit more about that and just kind of help like give you some more visual and to be able to kind of like see this in a bigger picture as well too. So let's see, I put here, use this as a guide, keeping in mind that you want to, use foods that are available seasonally and locally within your area. And by eating seasonal local foods, this is really specific to providing our body with the nutrients that we need within that specific season as well too, and location, because it's really key. Our locations provide specific nutrients that we don't get from eating foods outside of our location. So for example, winter squashes are something that we get to enjoy now. And if you think about these winter squashes, they sat outside in the sun all summer long, right? And they've been absorbing the sunshine and just absorbing the warmth and all of that energy. And so now in these darker, colder days, as we move into winter, through the fall, we're eating these foods. It's like eating sunshine and eating that energy, right? And taking that in. And so that's exactly what I'm referring to when I'm talking about seasonal and local. And then as well, the sun has created all of these specific nutrients that is available in that food for us. So it's energetic as well as actual physical that we gain from that. And so starting off with the first phase, which is the menstrual phase, which correlates to the season of winter and correlates to the phase of life called crone. And then the phase of the moon would be the new moon. And so if you do not have a menstrual cycle, you would be correlating this time to the new moon, which is what I do as a postmenopausal woman. I've also included the fasting window here for this phase, which we touched on last week, which is 13 to 72 hours. So within this first part of the phase, and this phase lasts, if you are menstruating for however long your menstrual cycle lasts, whether it's 1 to 3 days, 1 to 5 days, 1 to 7 days, 1 to 10 days, like whatever your cycle is, that's how long this particular phase lasts. And it tends to overlap into the next one that we'll be talking about, because again, this is different for every woman who has a cycle. Now, if you do not have a cycle and you're using the moon as your cycle, I just stick with basically like this whole first week of the new moon and consider that this part of the phase, and I call it the winter phase, since I don't have a cycle at this point in my life. And so we're looking at, some very specific foods. And again, it's not like you want to just go out and be like, oh, I have to eat all of these foods because that's the part of the cycle that I'm in. But let's look at this. Let's see what's available, what season it is, and how you can incorporate and maybe focus on some of these foods a little bit more, within this part of the moon cycle or your menstrual cycle. And so for animal foods, now notice I put in brackets here, cooked and raw protein. So this is the category that these foods that I'm listing here come into within our food combining window. And so we have, red meats, pasture raised, and grass fed. And we talked about this last week a little bit as well too. So definitely animals that have been raised in a horrendous commercial environment, that have been shot up with all kinds of, antibiotics, and in the States, hormones, that have been in these horrible environments and not fed their natural diet and not exposed to the sunshine or these natural elements or whatever. That's not what we're talking about here. We are talking about animals that have been raised in a sustainable, ecological way that supports the planet as well as the animal, and then in turn supports a human who is using it as a food source if you so choose to do so. And so that's what we are looking for when we are talking about bringing, red meats or just meat of any kind into your diet. And same with the eggs. We're looking at farm, pasture raised eggs as much as possible, not just free range, and this is where knowing your categories of food really comes into play as well too, because you can get organic free range eggs. But if you actually look that up, all that means is that instead of being in a cramped cage with a bunch of other chickens, they're all in this huge, massive space, like just all crammed up together, and they don't necessarily have a natural lifestyle. So what we're looking for is a more natural lifestyle. And this is where supporting your local farmers and getting to know what's available in your local area really comes into play. Even if you live in a city, we have the beauty of Google these days. What are are there any farms in your rural areas, like what, or farmers markets, like whatever, check out these different options and these different things and see what's available, because this also supports our local economies as well too, instead of these larger corporate economies, which are destroying the local economies and these small businesses and small farms these days. And this is where, giving your money to a small business keeps that money in the local economy, because that farmer is also buying supplies from the local economy and working with their local business, small businesses usually as well too. And so it's this beautiful circular effect where we are affecting not only our own personal health and wealth, we are supporting the health and the wealth of the community that we are part of as well too. And so just wanted to kind of throw that out there these days, because it's something that we should be looking at as much as possible. And I know there are situations where that might not be possible, but if it's at least on your radar and you're aware of it, it's a process that you can look at first and foremost if you have a choice of where you spend your money, because that's how we vote and that's how we speak, is where we put our money, right? Okay, so my little rant on that. And so the next thing on the list here is like whole traditionally cultured cheese, yogurt. And there's all kinds besides cow that are available these days. We have goat, we have sheep, we We have bison and water buffalo. In the States, if you can get it raw. That is what I absolutely recommend. And here in Canada, we don't have that option right now as a, kind of a full-blown public option, shall we say. And so if you're not doing your own, definitely at least try not to buy dairy products. Well, actually, I don't recommend dairy products that are homogenized in any way, shape, or form. They're very damaging to our bodies. So if you can't get at least flash pasteurized or raw, then dairy might not be a good thing for you to include in your daily repertoire, because it can put a lot of stress on our bodies and digestive systems if it's not in its natural state, where it's full of the nutrients and the enzymes that actually benefit us. When all of that has been removed, it's a stressful food for us. And a little side note, one of the few times that you'll hear me encourage you to buy imported foods is in the cheese realm, because unfortunately, most of the cheeses that are available at a retail level, and if you are buying direct from a farmer or whatever, find out what they're using and where they're getting their cultures from. Because in North America, they are all genetically modified and made in a lab. They're not actual real cultures. And so again, just something to be aware of. Okay, next thing on the list here is sustainable fish. Now, this is kind of a controversial one these days, because it's a really difficult one, because so many of our waters are polluted, and it's a really fine line to actually utilize this in a sustainable way. So if fish and seafood is something you are bringing into your repertoire, again, there's only certain local areas that have access to this type of food in a way that actually is still sustainable and supports a healthy environment for the oceans, for the waterways, as well as for humans. And so just being aware of that. Seaweeds and sea veggies. That's our next category. And this comes into your cooked and raw proteins as well too. And so this is an excellent plant-based source of cooked protein and raw protein. And again, just knowing where your sources come from, trying to source locally as much as possible. If you live near, if you're inland, that's a little bit more difficult. But also being aware of, where is it coming from? Where is it being harvested? What are the waters that it's coming from? As well too. And unfortunately, these are all things that we need to be aware of in this day and age that we live in. And just knowing that our food is, coming from a source that can support us to thrive and not make us sick or not be doing damage to the planet. So under the seaweeds and sea veggies category, we have the wakame, kelp, and kombu. So these three are very specific because they actually help us they support us with iodine, but also with iron as well too. So if you're actually menstruating in this phase, these are really beneficial foods that help the body, not just through the red meats, but coming from these different sources. This is where the variety comes in and where we really get to support ourselves on a deep nutritional level by bringing in the variety of the sources of these specific nutrients, because our body recognizes all of these different sources in different ways and is going to utilize it in different ways. And it's the combinations of these that we're looking for. And that's where the magic is. Instead of eating the same 10 foods over and over and over and over again, day in and day out for your whole entire life. So we're looking at variety, moderation, local, in season. Okay, moving into the next category, I'm calling this seeds, which are often used as grains. And these fall into the cooked protein category. Now, remember last week I included that blog post at the end of your handout talking about why it's so important to activate your grains, nuts, seeds, and legumes. Because if we are not activating the life in these foods, then they can be really stressful on our systems. And we talked about, if we look at in nature, when a seed falls on the ground, it doesn't just automatically sprout, right? It needs to get rained on, or it needs to be eaten by another animal and regurgitated back out or pooped back out in order for that seed's life to have been activated. And so that's where the word activated comes in here, because we're looking at ideally doing a culture soak. So we are actually pre-digesting that food like an animal would if they had taken that seed in first. And then we're doing a light sprout on it. So we're letting the life come to the surface within that food. And then we are utilizing it as a human food when all of its life is available to us at a really simple and easy way for our bodies to digest and utilize, not just at a surface level, but at a really deep cellular level. So that's where all of this really comes into play. And I know this is a lot of information, and it's might even be very new for a lot of you to be hearing this for the first time. And so just take what you can get. Know that you have access to this information indefinitely now. It's there. So you can keep coming back to this. The replay is going to be up. You can keep listening to this over and over and over and over again as much as you need to. So don't feel like you need to take all of this in and understand all of this right out of the gate. Trust me, this has been a 2-decade process. And so, don't expect that this is all just like, okay, I got this now. So don't put that stress on yourself. Just know that you have this handout to come back to. And this is where Robin has so graciously offered before too, that she's going to put all of this together in a little ebook format for all of us afterwards. So you will have this beautiful reference, and then a very basic printable version as well too, to be able to refer back to. And so just keep that in mind as we're moving through all this, like don't feel like you have to take it all in right now, or it all has to make sense right in this moment either. Okay, so in the seed category here, we have buckwheat and quinoa. And I put in brackets here that there was a basic recipe included, but I did not include that in your actual handout. I'm going to go back and post that up in the group later on, because there's a specific way to cook quinoa after you've soaked it, so you don't just have a big pile of mush. And it took me a while to figure that out and to learn that. So I wanted to share that with you. Okay, so we're still in this winter phase or menstrual phase, and now we're looking at the veggies or the plant foods. So we have 4 raw and at least 1 cooked. Now I say at least 1 because fall and winter is where we are moving into more cooked foods as opposed to the raw foods to be able to support us. Raw foods, we still need a portion, but that portion gets smaller in this season because raw food tends to be more cold and dampening to our spleen. And so look, coming from the traditional Chinese medicine background, we want more warming foods, and we want to be able to support our body in that way in this season. And so this is where you can bring in more than 1 cooked vegetable, right? And more cooked foods. And then the raw portion on your plate becomes a little bit less. And this is where we're also eating cyclically as well too, because the way that our plates look are changing with the seasons, not just in the ingredients, but the portions of raw to cooked foods as well too. And so this is where my favorite element is, to be able to bring in the small handful of microgreens or sprouts. And so you'd be looking at a variety, and this is why I buy the blends, because they almost always have at least 4 in them. And so within that blend, you have your 4 raw proteins as well as your 4 raw vegetables. And this is because the beauty of microgreens and sprouts are that they do double duty and they cover both these categories. And so you have this beautiful activated, micro protein food here that provides the amino acids to be able to support the cooked protein to be able to digest without robbing your body of nutrients to be able to make up the profile while it's digesting. And then we have all of its beauty as a raw food. So we have all of these enzymes and all of these nutrients that are so available, right? Because that's what would go into growing this into an adult plant, but it's all available in this early stage. And that is what helps your food to be able to digest and break down and assimilate as well too. And so winter, your or raw category in the plant and the protein can just be a handful of microgreens or sprouts. And that's what I was posting up last week. I posted up my oatmeal for dinner and I had a handful of microgreens on top. My fast and easy break the fast meal this morning was polenta porridge with a handful of microgreens, you know, in it that I cooked in bone broth. So it didn't have the cooked veg element in it, absolutely not. And I acknowledge that, but it had all the other elements in it that was necessary. And so I will make up for the cooked vegetable in my meal that I have later on today as well too, because I know I'll have more cooked vegetables in that meal. And that's okay to do, you know, on occasion. But like we were talking last week, it's really important to try and have all the elements in it, because that's where you get the complete profile, where your body doesn't have any stress at all in digesting and breaking down your food and is able to distribute it at a cellular level without, like we talked about that bank, it's like putting in $100 in the bank and taking out $101 if we're missing one of the elements, which is fine occasionally. But if you do that day in, day out all the time, then you're actually robbing your body of its ability to be able to thrive and support you at a super high level as well too. Okay, so we've got that. And then there's a list here of, you know, the different plants and vegetables that we want to be focusing on here. And then we come down to the squash category. And the two squashes that are in this one here. So one of them is the sunburst or patty pan, and those are summer squashes. So in the area that I live in, those are not available anymore. They're out of season. But we have the spaghetti squash available. That's in season right now. So it's a nice fall winter squash, but it's also one that's not like a really heavy, dense squash like the kabocha, for example. And so the beauty of a spaghetti squash is that you can actually combine this one with a cooked protein in the same meal. And I put a little note in here for you all so that you have that reference there as well too. And so this is where I really like to do like a nice, beautiful, hearty, like a meat and tomato-based sauce with mushrooms and vegetables and all kinds of stuff in it. And then instead of using like, you know, a traditional pasta, grain pasta, which would really be hard on the body to digest and would create this putrefaction we talked about last week, where you can use the spaghetti squash as your spaghetti to go with your sauce. And it's amazing how you feel after eating a meal like that, and how energized you can be. And you can almost kind of literally feel your body tapping into the nutrients and utilizing them and dispersing them in your body, and you feel energized afterwards as well too. And while we are here in this moment and I'm talking about this and I brought it up, the one pasta that you could combine in with a, you know, meat sauce per se would be corn. And I'm not even going to go into all of the details of why that is right now, because I could go on forever about that. So we'll just leave that for a deeper conversation. But just know that corn pasta is one that you could absolutely mix in with your meat sauce and cooked proteins of any kind, whether it's plant-based or animal-based. And it would not cause that same putrefaction and disruption in your digestive system and would actually really support you. Okay, and then we have the fruits listed here. And then again, looking at the ones that are in season. Then we have the legumes. We have adzuki, black turtle, and kidney. And again, these would be activated or at the very least sprouted. And the beauty of being in our modern society these days is that you can actually buy sprouted legumes these days in the store, as well as sprouted grains. So you don't have to do it yourself. And that is one of the beautiful things about our modern food sources that we have available to us today. So I'll share that out. Same with the nuts and seeds. You can also purchase these already activated or sprouted. Yes, they do cost a little bit more. But again, you're not sitting down and eating the whole bag in one sitting or the whole portion in one setting. You are taking a little bit and using it like a condiment to be able to support your entire nutritional profile in your meal. And so that's where, often people, run into digestive issues with foods, is when we don't use them in moderation and the way they were meant. And you see people, and then that's kind of common these days. I've seen people like literally sit down with like a whole package of nuts and just start inhaling mindlessly while they're doing other things, and literally go through the whole bag and be like, oh, I ate the whole bag. Like, that's super stressful on our bodies, and we're not getting any of the nutritional value, from it. So I just want to highlight that as and encourage you to, if you catch yourself in that habit, because we kind of all have had those habits at one time. If you catch yourself in it, just be like, oh, this is not serving me at my highest right now. So I'm going to set this aside, and I will save this for another time when I can incorporate into my meal properly. Okay, herbs and spices. Now for these, I just want to recommend that you look for the highest quality. Make sure that they've been tested to not have heavy metals and all kinds of stuff in them. And this is applying more to the medicinal herbs here, but even just your regular herbs and spices, make sure that they're fresh. So many times you buy like a store-bought herb or spice, and I opened up the jar and it's like, there's no smell. There's nothing, and that's not a good sign. When I started growing my own herbs and harvesting my own herbs was when I had this whole aha moment. I was like, oh my God, this is what thyme smells like. This is what basil smells like. This is what oregano smells like. This is what rosemary smells like, right? So, just being really aware of the sources of where you're purchasing these foods from, if you're purchasing them and not doing them yourself. And then we have a little category here called other. And in that one, we have coconut aminos, chlorophyll, honey, raw, unpasteurized, local, miso, raw, unpasteurized. Now, there are also, people tend to think of just soy-based misos as the only type of miso out there, and that's not true. There are so many others. There's like chickpea, lentil, pea, and so many other kinds as well. So look for these different ones. And then in a minute, I'll mention which category where the soy-based ones really benefit you as well, because soy has its place, but in a very specific place within either the moon cycle or our menstrual cycle, where it really supports us, as opposed to kind of throwing our balance out, shall we say. And I'll just put a little note in here. I didn't put this in here, but and if somebody wants to ask me later in the group, if I don't post it up in the group, remind me. But South River Miso is my favorite miso company in the whole freaking world. They're in the East Coast of the States. And they're just amazing. They have they've been doing raw miso for like a bazillion years. They were kind of like an original hippie company. And they their products, they have like the lesser aged ones, the longer aged ones, and so on. And they have all the different non-soy choices as well too. Now, keep in mind that any type of food product like this, they don't ship during the high summer because of the weather. So now is like a really good time to order these products and have them in place, because they don't go bad. They are traditionally fermented real foods, and they last for a really long time. And when you are looking for companies that you want to trust and source, again, look local first and foremost. Develop a relationship with the people who provide your food as much as possible. As somebody who, supplies to my community as well as supplies with our family, like that's why I got into raising our own food and doing our own food, was because I wanted to know where my food was coming from as much as possible. And I have relationships with all of my local farmers in our area as well too. I know exactly how every animal that I eat has been raised and harvested and cared for. And that goes for plant foods as well too, because the energy of the people harvesting your food and growing your food is just as important as the actual environment that it's being done in. So first and foremost, try to find those local sources, get to know people, check out farmers markets, have conversations, ask people, where are you getting your food from? Start there. From there, then, there are a lot of really amazing places, farms and ranches that ship all over the United States and Canada as well too. Like within Canada, there's ones that ship within Canada. This is more of a, I noticed this is more of a plethora and option within the United States. than it is in Canada to be able to find farms that ship throughout Canada. So if you're in the States, this is definitely a category that's way more open to you. And again, get to know the farm, check out their website, look at their Instagram. What are they posting? What are they talking about? What's important to them? One of my favorite, I have a few different favorite ones that I follow. The one that's popping into my head right now is Alder Spring Ranch. They're an incredible farm that I just, well, ranch that I just, I learn from them and how they do things. They literally spend their summers out on range with their animals. They don't leave them. They are with them 24/7. And their meat, though I've never tried it, I can tell you will be incredible and something like you've never eaten before in your life because of the love and the care that goes into the way they raise their animals and take care of them. So that's what you're looking for. And you can get a feel for that. You can get a feel, like just tap into your own sense and your own intuition. Like if you're looking at an Instagram page and you're following this farm and you're like, something doesn't feel right here, walk away. If you find one and you're like, oh, this is really interesting, I like what they're saying, now let me watch them and follow them for a while and see how consistent they are and what they're putting out there. What are the important subjects they're talking about? Use your intuition. Your gut will tell you. Just like when you hit on the right verse in your passion play, your body will tell you. And that's what we are looking at here in this whole entire program, is tapping into and creating space for you to trust the information your body is giving you at every level and in every realm. Right? Okay. So next thing I just want to talk about real quick here is I have an area that I call fat focus within all of the cyclical eating. And it is the same for the first part of your menstrual cycle up until ovulation. Or if you're following the moon phases, it's from new moon to full moon. And in this realm, within that first part, we're looking at a fish oil supplementation, if that feels right to bring that in at 1,000 milligrams twice a day. And again, you want to source from a really trusted and high quality, because I don't recommend any store-bought, honestly. I do not recommend any store-bought regular retail level of supplementation, period, full stop. Go through somebody that you trust who has access to a professional line like myself, or I love in this, actually he does States and Canada, so like David Avocado Wolf, Green Med Info, Sayer G, and Dr. Mercola. Those are 3 sources that you can trust. If they are recommending a product, you can trust a product that they are recommending. So those are 3 that I've vetted and I'm putting out there, including myself as well, for supplementation in this realm. If you actually want something that you can trust and that you know is going to support you and that's been tested and is at a really high level. Because unfortunately, at any retail level these days, and whatever you do, never buy any supplement off Amazon, please. They are 99.9% of the time not the real deal at all. And even the stuff that you buy in health food stores these days is so diluted and so absolutely polluted at a certain level that I can't even in good faith recommend it anymore. So that's just really a note on supplementation, which is why I am showing you through food and through basic fundamental principles how you can support yourself. And supplementation can be the next tier, that if you have access, ability, and availability, that can support you. But what is that foundational level that you build first and foremost that allows you to be able to thrive without these other elements and make it possible? Okay, so I just really went through that first phase in detail. I'm not going to go through the rest of the phases in detail because I want to move right into the movement part of our discussion here ahead of time. So the follicular phase is the next one. Like I said, that comes in after you're finished menstruating or the first quarter moon. And that season is spring and the phase of life is maiden. And then after that is where you go into ovulation or the full moon. And this is the summer season, the mother phase of life. And if you're doing the fat focus, oh, the other two elements I didn't talk about in the fat focus. So in the first cycle was the flax and pumpkin. And now in the second phase or parts here, we are moving into evening primrose or sunflower or sesame as your foundation. And for those of you that were in the spring run of this program with us, one of our participants, all she did was just do the seed cycling. She didn't bring in the evening primrose or the fish oil. She just did the seed part cycling of it. And she had not had a menstrual cycle in over a year. And just by doing that, she got her menstrual cycle back again. And everything fell into place for her just by doing that one thing. So I bring that up to share with you, to inspire you, and to also show you that just by doing something really small and simple and using food, you can really support your body. Okay, and so all the rest of the, the foods are all listed there in the categories. And so real quick, is there any specific question about that before we move into mindful and cyclical movement? No? Okay. If anything comes up for you later, this is what the group is for. Like, as you're going through this material and going through it again or watching the replays or whatever, if you have any questions, post it up in the group. I will answer. And this is where we all get to benefit from each other's questions as well, too. So, don't hold back. Okay, so mindful movement. This first part here that's in your handout primarily comes from the book here, where I'm talking about, the mindful movement part in the book, which is the base foundation. But you'll notice that I'm talking about movement, not exercise. I always use the word movement. And I've touched on this in other modules where we talk about, how it's really important to be aware of how we are moving throughout our days. And originally, we didn't have to go to the gyms and do this exercise because we were moving throughout our entire lives all the time. There was always movement involved. And, this whole concept of exercise came in when we started having more sedentary lives. And so noticing, how much movement is in your life. If you're moving all the time, exercise isn't something that you necessarily need to incorporate, and yet we've been trained to feel guilty if we are not exercising, right? But first and foremost, I want you to just notice your day. What are your movements? How are you moving? And how does your body feel in those movements and in that space? That's where we start. That's where we start becoming mindful of our movement and how we are using our bodies. And I always talk about, that body of water as the analogy, right? If you have a body of water that is stagnant, that is not moving, this is where the bacteria that become harmful and start to destroy the life in this body of water start to develop, right? Because stagnation does not support life, whether you're looking at it scientifically or in any realm, and especially out in our natural world. And we are part of nature. We are nature, right? So our bodies function in the same way. If we are stagnant, then our internal system is becoming stagnant as well. And so this is where the disruption and the imbalances can start to come from. And so again, it's not about going to the gym and doing a hardcore workout. It's about noticing how are you using your body, how are you moving, and how does your body feel within that. And the one thing that I am always, or the person that I'm always talking about, is Tony Riddle. His work changed my life and opened up the door for me to regain mobility after 5 years of basically almost no mobility whatsoever, including not even being able to walk and being in excruciating. Because I didn't understand how my body was. I was exercising, I was doing all of these things, and yet I was in so much pain and I was in agony. And then it got to the point where I couldn't even move anymore. And I didn't understand why. But once we begin to understand how our bodies are made to function and move, and in its original functionality, then it's like, oh, everything makes so much more sense now. And he breaks it all down really nicely. I put the link for his program here in, yeah, it's in the handout here. But if you're familiar with One Commune, it's like a community, a health platform, shall we say. And his program is Rewilding Human Movement. And it's actually free for the first 5 days. So you can check it out. You can take a look at it, and you'll go through the first 5 modules and actually get a feel for how our bodies were made to function. And this is where I was introduced to something that has saved my life over and over again. And especially you've heard me talk about with that foot trauma that I experienced back in September when we were in the middle of moving out. If I had not been practicing his toga, that is right in his beginning modules there, what you get for free, that injury could have been so much worse. My foot would have been crushed. It would have been completely crushed and every bone in my foot broken, because it would not have the suppleness and the ability to give and to be able to, have that pliability in it. It would have just been hard and stiff and fused together, like when I first started doing his program. And that fall on it with all of that weight. I took a picture of the apparatus that fell on my foot the other day when I sold it. And we'd come to realize it probably weighed closer to like over 300 pounds of steel that landed on my foot and hit right on that joint. Now, if my foot didn't have the ability to be able to bend and move and give when that hit it, it would have just broken it in half in that moment. And so I encourage you to take a look at what it is that he is sharing and teaching within that, because our feet are what hold our whole body and all of our weight. If you have knee pain, if you have back pain, if you have hip pain, if you have neck pain, we start with the feet. And it's just like in our bodies, right? There's these foundational elements. So we've been talking about starting with our microbiomes as the first line of looking at where these disruptions and imbalances are manifesting in a physical realm. And so just same with our bodies too. If our feet are not holding us in a way that actually supports us, and most women's feet do not, because we've been wearing high heels or we've been just abusing our feet, even if we thought we might have been taking care of them. I invite you to learn more and go deeper and learn how to support yourself. If you do nothing but just learn from those 5 days of modules that are for free, it will change the rest of your life. I can guarantee you that right now. So I really encourage you to go and take a look at that, learn those toga exercises. And like I said, if you do nothing else but teach your feet how to support you, it will change how you age, and it will change how mobile you are for the rest of your life. Because we don't need to be stiff old people who never see the sky as we age. Like I'm telling my mom all the time, I'm like, stand up. I said, if you don't want to be staring at the ground for the rest of your, life that you have available to you, stand up. Your feet will hold you. Trust in that, because she's been doing the toga exercises and I've seen the difference in her, but she's so conditioned to think that if she doesn't look down, she's going to fall. And I'm like, no, your feet know how to hold you now, Mom. You can trust in that. And then she does it. She's like, oh, you're right. And she just lights up and becomes this whole new person in that moment, and actually walks with her walker, but she walks. And it's just this beautiful, magical moment to see her when I can remind her of that. And she has that trust in that moment. She just forgets. So she needs a little reminder. So I know I'm talking about Tony Riddle and his work a lot, but please trust me on this. If we understand how to be able to utilize our bodies and mindfully move throughout our days, then you will stay mobile no matter how old you are, and you will stay flexible. You will not be afraid of breaking bones, breaking hips, having to use a walker, being incontinent, and all of these other issues that we've been trained to believe are part of aging, which is absolute bullshit. That is not part of aging. That is part of the medical systems having you support them to be wealthy for the rest of their life. That's not the way you were made, and that's not how you have to live. So I just want you to be aware of that. And I get a little passionate about that. So sorry, sorry and not sorry at the same time, because I just want you to thrive, no matter what age you are and where you are at life. We can be flexible, we can be mobile, and we have all of these, examples of these incredible. There's this beautiful 95-year-old yoga instructor, online doing incredible things. There's this 90-something-year-old woman who does gymnastics and competes still. There's all these like 90-year-old swimmers out there still competing. Like, they are examples of how our bodies are really meant to be. So don't buy into this story that it has to be something else, but learn how to support yourself so you can thrive physically and be flexible in all of these ways. And one of those ways is through understanding that, again, our bodies move differently every day, every phase of the moon, and every phase of your menstrual cycle. And that's where cyclical movement comes into play as well too. And so again, if you don't have a cycle, you want to follow the moon's cycle as your calendar and as your guide. And so if you take a look, if you're following in your handouts here, I'm going to go straight into the cycles here, or the phases real quick. And it just kind of breaks it down for us. So in the menstruation, winter, or new moon phase, this is where your hormone levels are at their lowest and your energy is at your lowest. So this is where we really want to focus on restorative and gentle movements. And keep in mind that your movements, should be relaxed. Even if you're not feeling discomfort in the moment, it doesn't mean that, oh, well, I feel fine, I can go out and do this hardcore workout. No. If you're not feeling any discomfort, it means that you are honoring your body in that moment and you're in that space, and it doesn't need to remind you of that. So still honor it. Keep to those relaxed movements. That's where, taking a nice casual walk or yoga can be really perfect in this phase. All the gentle movements, because we're increasing the beta endorphins here, which is a natural pain reliever as well if you experience pain in your menstrual cycle in this phase. This is also where specific hip opening exercises like the yoga cat-cow can really help manage cramping and whatnot as well too. And so this is where I was saying the menstrual and the follicular phase are going to overlap depending on how long your cycle is. Or if you're following the moon phase, just follow again that new moon first week and follow this gentler movement within that. And then we move into the follicular phase, which is the spring, the first quarter moon. And this is when the uterus begins to thicken and the ovaries begin to prepare to release the egg during ovulation. And so your metabolism is a little bit slower, your resting cortisol levels are lower. So high intensity workouts such as running or other cardio can really help counterbalance this slower metabolism. And if you're not doing gym workouts, this is the time in your life where, burst running after your child or an animal that has escaped really comes in handy. And this helps to increase your estrogen, which is what we're looking for in this particular phase. And this is where we tend to feel like the most energy of all of the phases as well too, as we are moving towards this ovulation. So ovulation is the peak, it's the summer, it's the highest energy. And it's also kind of the shortest part of the cycle as well too. But if you're following the moon cycle, we're just going to stick to that whole week of the that full moon part right there. And so this is where doing more high intensity and bursts and things, and where you have the energy to do that, and it really supports you. If you are doing, high intensity interval training or body weight circuits or any of those things, then this is where you would incorporate these. And this is where, if you're doing, like the yoga and the Pilates, this is where they can really come in and help enhance your endurance and muscle building in this area. And then the last one is the luteal phase, which is fall, the last quarter moon, right up until the new moon or the first day of your menstrual cycle. And during this phase of your cycle, this is where we're building more progesterone. than estrogen at this point, and your hormone levels are a little bit lower as it's leading into menstruation. This is where you can fatigue a lot faster and easier, and you need more recovery time as well too. And so this is where just focusing on some, again, gentle movement or low intensity, if you're doing strength training, potentially heavier weight training, Pilates, using the actual reform. And one thing I wanted to mention here that I didn't bring in was one thing that I recommend is rebounding. So having even a mini trampoline in your home is extremely beneficial. And I don't consider that exercise. And you can do like just light movement on it during that first, menstruation or new moon phase, and then kind of increase the different movements according to the phase of your cycle or the moon cycle. But that keeps your whole lymphatic system moving, and that is also supporting your mobility as you age and your flexibility as you age, and it's increasing the oxygen as it moves through the body as well too. Okay, so again, keeping in mind that everybody's cycle is unique and different when you're menstruating. And so these are guidelines to be able to, utilize and move through as you go through these different things. And so I was going to open it up to Q&A. So if anybody listening out there has any questions they want to bring in, now would be a good time to bring that in. And I'm just going to highlight your love missions for module 4, which are 1, to notice how you're moving or not moving throughout your day, and notice how that feels in your body. Just notice. That's it. Watch the first 5 days of Tony Riddle's program for free to get a better understanding of how our bodies were meant to move, and start practicing the toga. And again, if you do nothing else but that, you are still going to be 1,000 times ahead of where you would have been without that. And then if it feels right for you and you have space, and integrate these things slowly, like you don't have to go out and do all this week either, right? That's why I said you have all this information. You can keep coming back to it, watch the replays. For those of you who are on it for the replay for the first time, keep coming back to this, keep listening to it. Make a note of certain areas, like maybe a timestamp of where you want to come back to in the future, and reiterate a certain point for yourself when you're ready to go deeper on that piece. So set an intention to move daily, not exercise, but noticing your movements. Now set an intention to be mindfully aware of how you're moving throughout the day. And then if you feel really called to, and you're in a position where you can do so, purchase Tony Riddle's full program. Use that as a resource for the rest of your life to be able to maintain mobility and flexibility, to not be dealing with chronic pain, inflammation, and other issues. This is another layer of the foundation that we were bringing in here. So we know how our bodies are meant to move and how to support that. When we're eating the foods and doing the movements and bringing in our passion play pieces to be able to set up that foundation for transformation, that's where the magic happens, right? And this is where we get to create a life and build a life for ourselves that supports us in all the different phases of our life, whether you're in the maiden phase, the mother phase, the Maj phase where I am at, or the crone phase, right? We can thrive in every one of these phases of our life, and it can be magical. And it doesn't mean that it's going to be simple and, oh yeah, I'm just going to breeze through all of this. But it means that we have the scope, the awareness, then the tools to be able to use the information that's coming at us in a way that supports us and can lead us into that beautiful space of just being able to enjoy our lives and come from a place of ease and grace, instead of stress and chaos and anxiety. And so that's where I want to leave you for this week. And I know that, that was kind of a lot of information, and I was touching on 2 different categories. And I'm already thinking that next time this is going to be 2 separate segments. I'm going to add another module in So again, I was getting some great feedback from Maria earlier and from Robin earlier about how I can make this program even better for you. Like for me, I have been living my life this way for over 2 decades now. This is my life. Everything I'm sharing with you, I embody, and it is who I am, and it comes naturally. And so I understand that that's not necessarily where you are at. And that's why I'm sharing all of this, you know, beauty and magic with you. But it needs to be in a way that works for you and that supports you and doesn't overwhelm you and stress you out. So please provide me with feedback. Tell me how much is too much. Tell me what works for you. Maria was great, and telling me like smaller segments, like 15-minute pre-recorded segments even, and then potentially a longer engaged, session of questions and live could be way more supportive, in the learning experience. More time to integrate was Robin's feedback today as well too. Creating more space, having the program go longer. And so more time to be able to integrate it, splitting it all up into, even smaller segments. If you can imagine, this actually is all broken down into way smaller segments than it used to be. So I'm learning and you're teaching me how to be able to share with you in a way that really supports you. And is of value to you, because if it doesn't support you and it's not of value, then I'm wasting my time and you're wasting your time. And that doesn't work for any of us, right? So help me to help you. Provide me with feedback, provide me with anything. Like, don't wait until the end of the program. I am going to, have some questions and provide, and hopefully ask you to take a moment to fill out a form for me and provide me with feedback. But if you think of something in the moment, like, don't wait until then. Post it up in the group. I'm not going to get offended. I value that and I really look for that. And I can even potentially modify some of our remaining sessions to be able to make them work better for us in the moment, if that's possible as well too. So just want to throw that out there to all of you. And again, thank you to all of you who were here with me live today. I'm just so grateful for all of you, and just loving this energy of this community that we are creating. And the beauty of it too is even once we finish this particular live run, you're all still here. Nobody's going anywhere. We all get to still be together. That was the way I created this. And I wanted us all to continue to be able to support each other and continue to grow and to learn with each other as we go on, and still be able to ask questions and keep going. So just because, the program is potentially going to end, on December the 11th with our live sessions, none of us are going anywhere, and I'm not going anywhere. The material is all still there. The replays are all still there. So, we have this break between the fall session and the next winter session, which will be later on. I'm not even looking at running that until potentially February sometime, because I need my little bit of my hibernation, and I need to honor my body and the seasons and my cyclical way of living as well too. And so I need to take a little bit of hibernation time. But that doesn't mean I'm still not here in the group, present with all of you and available to all of you, so that we can all keep supporting each other even through our hibernation and through our rest and regeneration cycle, of the seasons, as well as our personal lives as well too. And so I'm going to end it there on that note, unless there's any other questions or comments before we end today's session.
Thank you, Joanna. So amazing. I even was thinking about how what you shared today, and it makes me really want to be able to access a freeze dryer for Luna, to be able to make her more variety, to like put this into practice for her in a way that would be bioavailable for her. I mean, not that like I need to put myself first, right? And I need to do this, but I couldn't help but thinking how limited she is in the variety that she gets, because I only have certain things, pre-made for her that are like meet even substandard of what I want. So it just made me feel really lit up of like, oh, right, let me get that wealth sphere working for me, because I need a freeze dryer for her.
Perfect. See, exactly, right? And then, but that's where taking care of yourself first, putting your oxygen mask on first, so you have the energy and the capacity, along with the wealth, to be able to support your family at that level. And I want to stress that with everybody, that it starts with you. And you become the living example, which is encouraging to the rest of the family as well, too, because they get to see you and they're like, wow, I want some of that. What is it we're doing again? And there's also ways that you can, kind of trickle down effect and sneak things in to support your family in a way that they might not even be aware of, but they're actually going to reap the rewards and benefits of as well too. So, Denise, you're still not muted, and you're even though your picture went away. Did you have something you wanted to ask or add?
I just wanted to say thanks again. Such great
Oh,
information. And yeah, thank you so much.
oh, you're welcome. Thanks for being here. I'm glad you were able to join us later on. Thanks,
Yes.
Denise. And Josiah, if you're there, you still got, do you have anything you wanted to add or any question or comment? Okay, so I'm going to, not for right now. Okay, thanks, Josiah. Thanks for being with us. So appreciate having you here. And okay, I see you. And Maria, I'm so glad. I know you had to leave early, but thank you so much for being here earlier. And to all of you that are watching this replay later on, I am just so grateful that we are all here together and supporting each other. And to know that, we created this beautiful circle at the beginning of this module and the beginning of every module. And all of you who are coming on later, you are being held in that space with all of us energetically as well, too. And so from my heart to your heart, I am wishing you all a most magnificent day, and I'm sending you massive love and blessings. And if I forget to put something up in the group that I said I would, please remind me. And again, don't hesitate to participate. I know this is a busy time of year, and tomorrow is the US Thanksgiving, which I keep forgetting about. So I know we're heading into a time in a season where, the pace picks up and there can be a lot more stress in our lives, coming at us. But let this be a place of refuge where you get to come and settle into your body and take a deep breath and rest and relax and just be in a beautiful energy and space that can recharge you. Even if you're not even taking in any information, just tap into that energy. Let it recharge you before you move back into the space of the rest of, this kind of chaotic time period in our lives, as the holiday season. And also noticing how that feels and potentially thinking about how we can make change for the seasons in the future of how we want to move forward in our lives, for the seasons as they are coming up in the next part of our life as well too. And so I will end on that note, and thank you all again, and I will see you next week for module 5, which I actually have no clue what we're talking about next week. So I'll take a look at that and I'll get back to you. Bye, everybody.